Hello, this is Dave Douglas, and you're listening to A Noise from the Deep. It's the Greenleaf Music Podcast. We're back with a conversation with Christian Dillingham, bassist, composer, band leader, based in Chicago. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. Christian's latest record for Greenleaf Music is called Halcyon. We talked a lot about his band with Matt Gold, Julius Tucker, Quinn Kirchner, as well as all the pieces and the inspirations and his compositions. You can get video of all these conversations and the entire catalog of Greenleaf Music by subscribing. Join us at greenleafmusic.com. You can also email us about the podcast, questions, suggestions, anything you want to say, podcast@greenleafmusic.com. And we'd love to hear from you. So check it out. Christian Dillingham, thank you so much for making the time. Sunday, what is it, March 9th, 2025. Heck of a year so far, huh? And this is an overdue label meeting hang with you, Christian. You know, I'm thrilled that we could do this, and it was great to hear all these tunes again. The record is so special. So thanks for both albums. You know, we should have done this after Cascades came out, and here we are with Halcyon, and it's a fantastic record. So congratulations.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity.
And you're in Chicago, right? So
correct, yeah.
And you tell me, you teach at, which school is it?
I had been teaching at Indiana University for the previous 4 years, and this is my first year now at Northern Illinois University.
Oh, cool.
So I'm technically labeled the instructor of bass, so I have students that are both have classical backgrounds as well as jazz, and I also coach a chamber music ensemble that doesn't involve any bass. So
like contemporary music, chamber music ensemble?
Not so much contemporary. It's really up to the students what they want to work on. So this semester just happens to be a Brahms piano quintet. So
that's amazing. And you're totally comfortable coaching them on Brahms? I'd be like,
absolutely. Yeah. No, that's a large part of my musical background as well. So
wow, cool.
Yeah.
I want to get into all of that, but we were listening to Dime Piece, and if people haven't heard the record, it's called Halcyon. It's a very personal statement, and I would say sonically maybe a bit of a departure, like a new sound for you. Maybe departure is the wrong word, but it opens up. It's such a nice groove, this Dime Piece, and from what I've read, from what I know a little bit about talking to you and reading what you've written about it, I know it's really a family inspired piece, that the whole record has to do with your father, but you talk about your wife and kids. And I guess, I don't know if there's a question in there so far. It looks like you're ready to say something, but I guess my question would be like, those have been sources of inspiration for me as well over the years. And I wonder, do you feel like it's a new musical influence when you're so personally reflecting on people, that have mostly been with you your whole life? When you've chosen a sound to remember your father, and you're referencing your whole family. So how does that work for you?
That's a good question.
Well, thank you. I try.
I find it really difficult for me to set out with a, like a goal of I'm going to write this song for this person. A lot of times the ideas come, and then I have to kind of figure out maybe where that stems from, and a lot of times it's after the fact. And when I think back and think about maybe what was going on in my life at the time that those ideas came, or what was happening in the world at that time. So I would say that's the case for most of the tunes on this record, with the exception of a couple things. Obviously, the ones that I didn't compose, and the one that I did name after my eldest daughter. It stemmed directly from a tune that she was just humming over and over one day. So, maybe one day down the line she'll come after me for not giving credit. But yeah, a lot of them, I kind of think back and kind of where that source of inspiration was coming from. So Dime Piece, I didn't set out to like write that for my wife, but thinking about like what's behind the tune and kind of like what how the bass line kind of anchors everything in that tune. That was that period of time for me was really a crazy rough patch, and she was that anchor for me to kind of hang on to. So that piece was dedicated to her. And the term dime piece, if people aren't familiar with that, that's oftentimes describing a beautiful woman being a 10 out of 10. So the tune also happens to be in 5, with a little snippet of a few 10/8 bars. But so that's where that all comes from.
So literally and figuratively.
Yes.
Wow. It does set a tone. That's what I was thinking about hearing it just now. It's really, especially bringing in Matt on guitar, Matt Gold, really sets a vibe. And so now that you mentioned that, she was the thing that held you together through that time. But it sounds to me like you do the writing first and then you reflect on influences and where it came from and come up with titles and relationships.
Yeah. If I set out with this is what I'm going to do, it's just usually it doesn't feel authentic to me. And usually ideas don't come naturally for me if I'm really trying to force something. So a lot of times I have to reflect on it afterwards and think about, like everything I previously mentioned.
I'm a little stunned because I wouldn't say that I work in the opposite way, but my experience, it's a little different. Like I find I have to be having that thing. Not that, of course, nobody wants to force anything. But I find like to have the idea first and then have to sort of puzzle out, okay, how am I going to get to this, and throw away ideas and come up with things and no, that's not it, and really strive. And the hardest thing for me is to just start writing. Mm-hmm. And then have something.
We're on the same page with that.
Yeah, but you are saying, your idea, you're writing from a flow and letting it go and then figuring out what it's about and what's the program.
Eventually, I mean, it's a goal for me to do what you're describing and really be more direct in that way. But when I when I am writing music, it's usually like I just have not carved out time in a way that is conducive to writing like that. So that's a goal that I need to reach at some point. It's much more sporadic for me, and usually involves setting a deadline that holds me to it, and then it has to happen.
I'm a big fan of deadlines. I mean, love-hate relationship, let's say, but...
Absolutely.
I was also going to say, you mentioned having trouble carving out the time to work that way, and I realize bass players are always in demand, and you're gigging all the time, and if you're like me, when you're en route to a gig, it's not the time that you're able to sit and focus on composition.
Yes and no. It depends, because when most of these tunes came about on route to actually the drive back and forth from here to Indiana University in Bloomington. So I try to utilize that time, with either checking out new music or checking out music I have to, prepare, and then getting ideas. And a lot of the things that end up, as voice memos in my phone, I end up not doing anything with. But that's also where a lot of these first developed from.
So that's how you capture the ideas as you're driving to Bloomington or back.
Yeah.
Is to sing them into voice memo.
Yes.
And then transcribe them later.
Yeah. Not everything, but a lot of things, for sure.
God, I've never been able to do that. I don't know if I'm just a bad singer or I don't know how the technology works, but like the few times I've tried that, I listen later and it's just like, this person is mad. This person is crazy.
Oh, well, if anyone went through my voice memos, that would definitely be the case, because there's a high percentage of it that is not useful in any way.
Yeah, but that's cool to have that time and space, and it is. There's something very meditative about driving, that if you can, spend that time, like you said, working on the music and thinking about it, and then thinking up what you might like to write. Like I'd imagine a tune like Dime Piece, it's more about, let me imagine this space that needs to be created for this band.
Definitely the first idea in that song came from the bass line. That was definitely the first kind of fragment of that coming together.
Well, it's really great. Thanks. That's I had in my notes to ask you about your dad, and then after this next excerpt to ask you about composition process. But I feel like we just talked about composition process. So why don't we listen to a little bit of Halcyon, the title track, and then, which I think, from what I read, what you wrote about it, seems to be a remembrance of times. Sure. I'll just play a little bit. Wow, that's great. Opens up with a beautiful bass solo. Was that part of your thinking when you wrote it, or did that emerge later?
I think that came later. I had the ostinato, and I think probably as we it's like got the band together and we started kind of reading through things. It felt right to have have the bass solo in that opening.
Yeah, there is. It gives it especially when you know that it's about your time with your father when he was on the planet.
Yeah.
There's a real personal message in it.
Yeah, well, my dad was the reason I started playing the bass, actually. My parents had now I have pretty much all of their records, but they had a very large jazz catalog. And he would always, this was young before I even played an instrument, but he would always say, tell me to listen to the bass. And to him, it was the coolest instrument. And at that time, I mean, I was very young, and I wanted to be in the NBA, and I had no thoughts of doing anything with music. And my first instrument was actually trumpet. So
wow, huh?
Yeah.
So I lucked out that you changed to bass.
Oh, I was the trumpet. I give it up to trumpet players. Next to the drums, one of the most physically demanding instruments. But there's a lot of bass players that started on trumpet. It's kind of a strange relationship that I'm not really sure the connection there. I think there are definitely some, but there's several. But anyway, I eventually switched to the bass and switched to electric bass from trumpet. And that was kind of that first initial thought came from him. So I definitely owe that credit to him, and just my parents, the music that they loved. A good chunk of it became music that I loved. So
was your father a musician at all?
No. He did, however, I think he was maybe in his 20s. He sang in like a doo-wop group.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very musically informed and had great taste in music, but no, did not play an instrument. My mom plays piano, still plays, not professionally, but I grew up her playing piano in church and playing piano at home all the time. So I grew up with piano in the house and just hearing piano music a lot.
At what point do you feel like you made the decision to be a musician full time? Like, how old were you?
I was in high school, and I had started taking lessons from a freelance bass player in Youngstown, Ohio, Jeff Bremer. And he kind of played everything. He played in the Youngstown Symphony. He played jazz, played rock. So he had, multiple electric basses, double basses. And, when I went to him, I was very much into rock music, and he was kind of, he would give me things to check out, like, he was very accommodating to what I was into, but and then give me a CD like, hey, this is cool, but listen to this week, and kind of just slowly, introducing me to things that I had, I didn't hear in my parents' music collection. And so once I kind of saw that, you can actually, play music as a profession and make a living from it, that was pretty much it for me. The only other idea I had was being a financial advisor, because my grandpa and one of my uncles were very successful at that. So,
wow.
But by the time I was a senior in high school, I couldn't see myself doing anything other than music, which I think is the way it has to be.
So, and when did you play your first gigs? How old were you then?
When I started playing the electric bass, it was to be in a rock band some friends started. And technically, we played a few gigs.
14, 13?
I was 15, 16 when that started. Yeah.
That's great.
But that's a stretch to say those were, I would say we were lucky to have had the opportunity to perform.
No, I understand, but that's still a gig. That's out there playing. That's the way it was for me too, around the same age. And looking back, I'm glad there's no video floating around. But okay, one last nerdy question, because it sounds like you know there was all kinds of music in your house and at church and different kind. Nobody said to you, "Oh, this is the kind of music that is good and that you're supposed to." So, what was the first record that you bought for yourself, independent of what your parents had?
I mean, it was probably like Michael Jackson Bad or something, I mean, some of the, first music that I was buying was definitely, I guess when I started buying music, I was very much a hip hop head. And the more I got interested in kind of when I switched to electric bass, that kind of started leading me to other genres like rock, and Hendrix kind of just blew my mind. That was like, and really the Band of Gypsies was the first Hendrix album that kind of got me. And then checked all the other stuff out later.
Cool.
But yeah, where I grew up, there's not really much in the way of arts. So, I'm thankful that my parents, they kind of, initiated the lessons for me. I played in the school jazz band, the high school jazz band, but that was really there wasn't any kind of, youth orchestra or anything like that. In the town I grew up.
Same.
So it was pretty much like, you have to go find this. And luckily once I got into jazz and exploring that, there was a jam session that happened on Tuesday nights at a bar in downtown Youngstown, which was, my parents both worked in Youngstown. That was about 20-minute drive for me. And they were cool enough to let me go to this session, as a high school student. And my teacher was the house bass player. So
there you go.
That's where I kind of connected with Sean Jones, played in that house band. So, they were very cool to let me do that on I think it was Tuesday nights, and, get home very late and get up and go to school. But that was such a major impact on me, being able to be exposed to, real musicians, and just learning and really messing up and, really diving in.
Halcyon days.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
That's so awesome. I mean, that's, when you say there wasn't much arts around and you were kind of on your own having to find it for yourself, but to have just one place to go and play with people that are into the same music you're playing is like so significant, I think.
Oh yeah.
So I didn't have that till a little later. And it was, it's so funny how you just get into the music and then it becomes this solitary thing for a while. And then you realize, oh, this is how you communicate with other people. And it sounds like that's where it came for you. And I'm sure that the relationship with your father was a huge part of that. So, having the music in the house is huge. And I think, for anybody that's got kids in that, 5 to 10 year range. It's just, now people, there's not so much physical music around. My father too had a record collection, but now everything's digital and the kids are all on their phones. And so I think it's just important to remember, let's make sure there's music available.
Absolutely. Yeah. My dad also, he went, he spent some time in Pittsburgh, and I had relatives in Pittsburgh. So, he knew about the Crawford Grill, and, he saw Art Blakey play at the Crawford Grill. And so, I would be hearing about things that now, I mean, that's mind blowing to me, but at the time I didn't really know some of these names or
right.
The significance of the Crawford Grill. Luckily, the original Crawford Grill was still there in Pittsburgh when I moved there, so I got to experience that. But the drummer the bar was Cedars Lounge in Youngstown, and the drummer Shedrick Hobbs, he actually his one thing that everyone always would say about him is that he played with Bird at some point. Bird, I don't know, was traveling through, and so just being as a young person, getting to be able to sit and talk with someone like that. I mean, it really shapes things in a major way for you, and getting to just connect with lineage and learn from older musicians that have a direct connection to the masters. That was a major impact.
Yeah, and that's something that's getting rarer and rarer as the years go by.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's awesome. It was interesting that you mentioned Hendrix and being a rockhead, because I was going to play this track from the record called Sinclair's Struggle that to me feels like maybe more of a blues vibe. But let me just play a little bit and we'll talk about it. Did you think about bringing Matt Gold in before you wrote the music for this record?
That's a little bit difficult for me to answer, because some of the tunes I had together before I contacted these musicians, and then some of them came together after our first kind of gig, where I was still kind of piecing things together. So that particular tune, I honestly can't remember where that fell in the timeline of things, but Matt, we have a shared love of Americana and folk music, and the vibe that I was looking for this record, Matt that was who I wanted to have play guitar, and I also kind of wanted guitar to be kind of the main voice of this music, and he's just such an amazing musician, and just seemed, like the perfect fit for what I was looking to do, and he absolutely captured what I was hoping to accomplish.
Yeah. It's this track in particular feels like, it feels like a guitar tune, not like the guitar overtakes everybody, but that it's really, a lot of what the vibe is around.
Yeah, and he's amazing at kind of, walking that line of if he really wants to take over, certainly can do that. But I think the way he and Julius, their interaction, and to me is just exactly what I was hoping to accomplish. So very, very thankful that all three of these guys were willing to come on board.
And it looks like when you're playing live shows, you're able to have all three of them with you.
For the most part, yeah. There's been, they're all busy, and there's been a few things but yeah, for the most part, it's been the same band.
That's great. That's not easy to do when everybody's so in demand and so busy.
Yeah.
It's not easy at all. Matt and Quinn do a decent amount of touring. Julius as well. But luckily the upcoming things I have is everyone's on for those. So really looking forward to getting back together.
That's great. Get the music out there. And it's you're touring around, it's in the Midwest mostly, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's awesome. Where do you play in Chicago?
We did for this, the first gig with this band, we played at the Jazz Showcase, and then we did the record release at the Green Mill, and
wow, fond memories.
Yeah. The things that we have coming up this month are part of this Rendezvous Arts chamber music series that I think this is maybe the third year of this organization. And we have a concert in Dixon, Illinois, and then one in Lake Forest, which is just outside of Chicago, and then another one in Chicago. So it's a really, really cool chamber music series. It's happening here, and
wow,
happy to be a part of it.
I hope people go and check it out. It's all, at his website at Greenleaf. You can find out about it too. I wanted to ask you about Julius Tucker, your pianist, or the pianist on this record. They always say, your piano player. It's like, I'm not your piano player, but the piano player that you brought in to play this music. But first I wanted to play a little bit of this track, Twice Lost. That is beautiful. Julius has such a nice touch. I understand that, like you, he's also been involved in a lot of classical music playing, or chamber music, for lack of a better word. I'm not a huge fan of the word classical, but let's say notated music from various periods.
Yeah, he's extremely versatile, and yeah, and you mentioned his touch, especially as a bass player. He, he's so sensitive in that way, and I feel like dynamically he really um, reaches the full spectrum of dynamics, and he's just brilliant. So I think that can really be heard on that track for sure. This one was one that, to be honest, I feel like this is one that, for the record, and I think we did it at the record release, and it's just a tune that I feel like needs to live on the record, and kind of what's behind it. Doing live, although it seemed to really resonate with people. For me personally, I just feel like it's one that is not for performing.
Huh.
So my dad had been having some heart issues, among a lot of things were just coming to a head. And the year prior to his passing, he had, oh gosh, let me remember now. He went into cardiac arrest. And so, long story short, they decided there was this procedure that could happen where they couldn't really guarantee what would happen on the other side. Basically, they bring the body down, and to preserve the cells, and then over like a 48-hour period, I think they slowly warm the body back up. And so that was kind of just a total long shot of, the other alternative was definitive. So we kind of felt like you've already mourned. The initial thought was that he was gone, and amazingly we had a whole nother year that was really beautiful, and no one expected that to happen. He came back fully himself, which was a miracle. So that's where the title comes from. The tune ends on an augmented chord. It's kind of, to me, sounds like a question, because that's how it felt. When you kind of feel, you think that you've lost this monumental person in your life, and then the news that the operation was successful, but then you're kind of just left kind of trying to figure out how you're going to proceed with this, and it's such a crazy thing to process, so that's kind of where that tune comes from.
Yeah, but having an extra year, what a blessing.
Oh, yeah. And that was, no one expected that, especially to just come back and be fully himself. Was
the prognosis that he was out of the woods, that now everything was going to be fine, or did you still live with the feeling like, oh, okay, we're living on short time?
Initially, they weren't sure it was just going to be, time. And, after, I don't know, at least a week, it was clear that, it's, this actually worked, which was really a miracle. So, and that, getting to just have that another year was such a blessing, and, made more trips home, and And so that was really special.
But also you get to ask all those questions, think of like, okay, what do I want to ask now? What do I want to, let me get this communicated.
Yeah.
And that's, people don't always get that chance to have those last conversations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, that was one thing I was really thankful for when it did actually happen, that, we had that time and been able to have those conversations before that, because that was the other thing I didn't mention, is that, we did have some conversations where I actually had to leave home where my parents are for, to get back. It was just like there was so much that was up in the air, and it was like, well, you could stay here. We don't really know so I kind of had to leave with the thought that I was saying goodbye. And for it to come back and everything happen the way it did, it kind of just leaves you like you've gone through this, prepared your mind for this is the end, and then it's like, it's a mind trip.
I can't even imagine. Yeah, that's wow.
Yeah, so that's where the title comes from.
And that was, you were going through that when Cascades, the first one for Greenleaf Music, came out. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the timing,
and that's a very different record from this one, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I don't know that was that wasn't really intentional. It's just, like I said, what was happening with me, what was happening in the world. Some of those tunes were older tunes that were on Cascades, like Someday Soon was like the first tune I ever wrote. So that was definitely the only one like that. But some of the other ones were older than some of the other tunes on that record. But that record we recorded in 2021, and then I believe it came out September of 2023.
Right.
And so a lot of the music on Halcyon, developed kind of between September and December of 2023.
Oh, interesting.
With my dad passing in September.
From a musical standpoint, your decision to go in a more you used the word Americana, and let's say maybe folk roots and blues, and having this different texture and color to the record evolved during that time when you were releasing and playing for the previous record. I think a big part of the sound and the tone of the record is a musician we haven't really talked about yet, Quinn Kirchner. So your decision to meet and to bring him in, I mean, obviously you're both in Chicago, so I'm sure you had been playing for some time, but Quinn brings a real special vibe.
Yeah, all of these people I've thankfully been able to play with for several years in Chicago. And we haven't recorded. That's a kind of an unfortunate thing about Chicago, is that I think it's changing, but there's so many people that I've played with for years now, and there's no recording of us playing together. So Quinn is one of those people, and I love getting to play with him. He's also extremely sensitive and versatile and can go so many different directions depending on what the music calls for. But yeah, his sound and his approach was also just seemed like the perfect fit for the music. And he's involved in all kinds of different projects
Yeah, I was going to say it's great that you can get him on these live shows because I know how busy he is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, it's a great sounding band, and there's a track that operates a little differently in terms of the improvisation. It feels like there's a lot more open, instructionless improvisation, or maybe there is instructions, but it sounds like there's on this the Peace Awaits. I mean, there's a spiritual quality to the playing, but there's also some real open, out of time and not on a grid type of playing that you all do really well together. And I didn't hear in any of the other tracks. So it was a little bit of an interesting surprise. There's also, it feels like, God, I'm putting on my nerd hat now. I guess I have a Greenleaf hat, but now I'm putting on my nerd hat. There's like a whole tone thing that sounded to me like maybe it was a predetermined part of the strategy within the tune.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Woo. Yeah. Good ears.
For the win. Yeah. Wow.
There's kind of like landing points. That's the best way to describe. The bulk of it is free improvisation with kind of just these landing points, and those landing points, are definitely predetermined. Melody, and just an overall constructural sort of idea of I explained what I was looking to accomplish, and they're all very comfortable in doing that too. So they're down for whatever. So
yeah, it's a great and surprising track, and it's a beautiful mood. Also, it makes me wonder, so now what are you cooking up now? What's where is the music leading you? What's the next?
I have you mean as far as projects or this band?
I mean, it's really interesting talking to you and hearing about how the two records came about and how it was so different and just part of your life. And I would imagine now other things are happening in your life as they do to all of us, and I'm sure it's leading you somewhere musically.
Yeah, well, I would say that, everything that's happening in the world right now, and certainly in our country.
We're not going to mention him, though.
No, we're not. But, I'm sure anyone that's creating art right now is, I don't see how that isn't a major factor in what is being created. So I've been writing for a trio that I have with Greg Ward and Jeremy Cunningham.
Oh.
And we've played together for a long time, sometimes under Greg's name, sometimes Jeremy's. And it's another thing that's just never been documented. So another thing that happens in Chicago, there's, a lot of groups that, so many projects I wish would have been documented that haven't been. So that was something I wanted to make happen. So we played at the Hungry Brain recently, and we'll be recording in the spring some new music. And that's a much more, some of that is I would just say, just the that instrumentation just leads for it's very open. Mm-hmm. As I mentioned, what's happening right now is definitely impacting all of that. I also have been writing for the Cascades band again.
Okay.
Hoping to get that group. We have some
with Leonard Simpson on saxophone.
Leonard and Dave Miller on guitar and Greg Archery on drums. So hoping to record with that group in the fall is what the goal is. So
great.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Lot to look forward to.
Yeah. Well, I've waited so long to, kind of get my own projects happening that, now it's just, I'm trying to be very diligent. I'm still, very active I love getting to just be a sideman, and I also still play in a variety of settings, new music settings and orchestral settings. So I'm trying to just be much more diligent about getting my own music out there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Greenleaf is certainly proud to be a part of supporting that, and getting the records out there and getting them heard, and, seeing you on the gigs. And I live in New York, so I'm not going to see the shows out there, but I would love to hear that live, because it's really great. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I'll bring it to New York.
Bring it to New York. Please do. Bring it to New York and beyond. And thank you so much for making the time. It's really illuminating. We'll go out with this piece awaits, but I just want to say thanks for everything, for the music, for collaborating with us on getting these records made, and beautiful covers, and it's just really great to hear it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So now Peace Awaits.
This is the one that we were talking about with the landing points, and and the kind of the last melodic material that happens at the end of the piece. Really, what I was hoping to capture is that like I mentioned, I had a lot going on personally at the time, and the goal for that piece is just for people, regardless of what they're experiencing, that there's always light at the end of the tunnel, and that the peace awaits regardless of your circumstances. And Matt used some sort of effect on his guitar that, to me, just really, it was like the icing on the cake for me. There's this effect that he has just on the final note that he plays that, to me, symbolized like ascension. And a lot of these tunes, I didn't really tell these guys what was behind a lot of them, just because it was very personal, and I didn't want to, and maybe that would have been helpful information, but, I don't know if I was even at the time comfortable enough talking about where everything was coming from. So, I didn't want to make anybody uncomfortable, or, that could go a variety of ways. So I just, at the time, they weren't really aware, and I feel like they've probably learned more about the songs at live shows when I'm talking about them.
Yeah, but they contributed to what your whole experience is, and I think I agree. Sometimes it's better to not tell them and let them embody it from the shape of what the music you brought. And it feels like that now, having heard you say that. This piece really, and Peace Awaits, as you describe it, is like perfect for this period too, with what we're going through.
Absolutely.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Peace.
Thank you, Christian, for making the time.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah. All right.
Later. Peace. Thanks for listening to the Greenleaf Music Podcast. We're going to let this track play out. Peace Awaits by Christian Dillingham. Thanks for listening. Come and join us anytime, greenleafmusic.com. Thank you so much.